All right, string methods, or as they're otherwise known, string functions. These two I will use interchangeably, and I'm already apologizing if I'm not entirely consistent. They more or less mean the same thing. Methods is slightly more specific. Methods refers to functions that live inside a class, so they basically refer to string objects. Functions are a more general term. So we've already seen the dot format function, and the dot format helped us put values and different variables into strings and print them more nicely, but there's a bunch of other ones that you guys should know about. So we're going to have a look at them. So the dot capitalize function, basically, so if you have a string, Bob.capitalize, whatever the value of Bob is, it's going to capitalize the first letter and everything else is going to be lowercase. So here are some examples. Hello.capitalize, you notice the rest of the uppercase letters are now lowercase. H, the first letter, is capitalized. If hello was a lowercase, it would work that way. So the dot lower function or method, basically lowercase is the string. So no matter what your characters were, everything is lowercase after you use the dot lower. Next up, we have the dot upper. Same as dot lower, except now everything is uppercase. Next we got starts with, and this is a good one. You can basically check, and this will return true or false. You can check if a string starts with a particular character or a particular sequence of characters. So we could have basically gone Python that starts with capital P, that would have been true, capital P, small y, that would have been Python that starts with K, would have been false. Ends with works the same way as starts with, just check the last character or the last sequence of characters. You can do Python.ends with 1. That's going to be true. Next, strip. Strip has multiple uses, so it's quite handy. You can strip a particular sequence of characters. For example, in here we say we're stripping ship. So when we have a string that says championship, it's going to say champion. Repair, it's going to say epi, because has been stripped. But if you don't use any arguments, what's going to happen is it's just going to strip if there's space at the end of the string. So string.replace again takes 2 arguments. So for example, we have cashew nuts.replace. So we're going to replace, in this case, cashew with cocoa, and that's going to return coconuts. Emacs.replace Emacs with Vim. That's going to return Vim. Now, in the links below, you can essentially get more information on string functions or string methods. One is by basically in your console typing help string, and the other one is following that link. So we got a couple left. So we got the split function. Split function is pretty handy. We're going to get to it in later tutorials, but for now you just need to know that basically it converts a string to a list and splits the words on the spaces. You don't have to split on the spaces. You could choose a different character to split on, because space is just a character, right? So you could have, for example, split on a full stop, and then it'll break the big string into sentences. With the exception of like if you have Mr. or Mrs., you got dots there. So that's essentially how that works. You've also got count. And count counts however many times a particular character or sort of substring repeats in a string. So we had a look at a lot of those, and it's time to get into it with the code. So we're going to try in PyCharm, and we're going to try in the Python interactive shell to use all of these functions. All right, so let's get hands-on with Python string functions, or string methods as they're otherwise known. So here we have a multi-line string. It's actually copied and pasted at the top of the Wikipedia entry for Python. And here we have methods that we're going to trial out. Now, I'm going to use the first 5. I'll run the Python console, or the interactive shell, and I'm going to play around with the first 5. And then I'm going to use this large string and play with the rest of them. So let's say we have a string, and the string is just p equals to Python. So let's get handy with all of them. P dot lower is going to be Python lowercase. Now, if I type in P, that's still going to be the old uppercase Python string, because remember, strings are immutable. You cannot change them without the equal sign. But if I say P equals to P dot lower, now P is the lowercase Python. And if I type in P dot upper, that'll be the uppercase. If I type in P dot capitalize, that will be the sort of proper first letter capitalized, cap P. So next I can try starts with and ends with. And since in the examples they were both true, I can basically get this wrong. P dot starts with. And I'm actually going to make a very, very close mistake. So since P is now lowercase, I'm going to try the uppercase one, and that should return false. So if I did P dot starts with a lowercase p, that would have worked. Because remember, the last, we did change it to lower, it's permanently lower. That's P right now. So we did starts with, I mean, we can do ends with, P dot ends. And remember, it just starts checking sort of to the back. So you could type in anything. You could type in something large, like Y song, and this will evaluate to true. Okay, so we had to look at those. Now, let's comment these out. Go comment everything out except for the one that we're going to be using. And I'll be leaving them here because they're going to be a part of your code bundle. And I don't want you to miss anything. So we're going to start with strip. And this one is interesting because perhaps I didn't mention one key part of it. So I'm going to leave some suspense into this one. So what if we just printed text.strip run? Well, it's trying to get rid of leading and trailing white space, of which there is none. But what if we put a character, like the most important character in English, the most frequent character in English, run? Well, nothing happens. And that is because you're only stripping the leading and trailing characters. So you really can only strip the capital P or the dot, right? So if we stripped out the full stop and printed it, now that, is there a space there? That's interesting, because multi-line comments would probably mean that the very last character is new line. So I've learned something, but this would definitely work. So if you stripped capital P, oh, maybe that's again a new, interesting. So if we put that guy in there and that guy in there, and we press play, then it's Python. And if we put the full stop in here, then the full stop is gone. So one thing that you should be careful, and one thing that this serves to show us, is that there are invisible characters that are parts of strings. There is a new line character at the end and a new line character at the beginning. So the strip method in this case cannot do anything. So I think that was quite insightful. So let's play with the next one. I'm going to turn this one into a comment, and I'm going to play with the next one. So Control-L, text.replace. So what do we want to replace? Well, you can replace Python with anything you want. I don't know. We can make it an accurate article where Python is now Java, but we haven't printed it. Print text.replace. So now you're going to have the very same article, except that Python is not going to say Java. You can replace one character with another. So you can basically replace A with at. So this should be interesting. Python is an interpreted general purpose language. And you can go on and on and on. So for example, if you wanted to make some funny looking text, well, you'd have to do something like this. So you'd have to say text equals to text.replace, that with that. And then maybe you could replace something else with something else. So you can replace L with 1, and then you could print text. And this is useful for passwords, you know? So now there's no more L's, and there are no more A's. See? Released, re1, least. Okay, let's now have a look at split. So at first, if we print, for this example, just text.split, you're going to see a very large list. So every space is sort of a splitting point, and this string has been turned into a list. And just like I said as an example before, I mean, we could split on a comma, or we could split on a full stop, and then the sort of rules for when these things split are going to be a bit different. So Python is an interpreted, comma, high level, comma, general purpose programming language created by Guido. So that's split. And finally, we're going to have a look at text.count. So for this one, we can print text.count, and you can put any character there. And I mean, it'll be interesting. We could probably even put space. So it'll tell us how many spaces there are. So it's going to come up with a number, 57 spaces. Instead of space, you could have put A, 31 A's. Now, E is usually the most common character in English, so 34 E's. T is the second most common. It's been beaten soundly by A in this little text. So I think that demonstrates a variety of Python string methods or functions and how they work. So a quick brief word about escape sequences. In Python, using the triple quotation marks, you can basically include any characters that you want inside your string, other than triple quotation marks, which are really not used in English. So that's not an issue. But there's another way to do it using, single or double quotation marks. And to do this, you're basically going to need these escape characters. Now there's a whole long sequence of them, but the main ones are as follows. So the / new line, basically the backslash and the new line are going to be ignored. The double backslash will ignore the backslash. Backslash quotation mark is going to ignore the quotation mark. Double backslash double quotation mark is going to ignore the double quotation mark. So I'll really quickly just demonstrate this before we move. So here in brief is the issue with escape sequences. I've just pasted a Shakespearean sonnet, and if I try to print it, there is a great many quotation marks or apostrophes used. And as I said earlier, we can solve it simply by using triple quotation marks and run it, and it just works. When 40 winters shall besiege thy brow and dig deep into thy beauty's field thou private library. Okay, you really don't want to hear me reading Shakespeare. But let's actually tackle this with normal quotation marks. So what do we do now? Well, actually using double quotation marks, because they're not present here, is probably the most elegant solution, but we can use the backslash character. So that's going to get rid of that one. That's going to get rid of that one. Is there any of them before? And it's this one. So we have a string all the way through. So let's try printing it now. And there you go. It works. For the sake of argument, let's say I wanted to actually have double quotation marks around shall. Since we've got single quotation marks there, these are actually going to be included, as you can see the shall. So if I wanted to include another one, again, for a single quotation mark, I would just use that backspace character. As I said, this is just a quick side note. My advice for all practicality is forget about escape characters. You should know what they are when and if you run across them. But in practice, you can just use the triple quotation marks. Very elegant, efficient solution.